Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with Dr. Solomon Guramatunhu, who is an eye specialist, a philanthropist, and a lover of life. Dr. Solomon Guramatunhu, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me on your show. Thank you.
You just come back from the surgery to be with us. We want to thank you for having us in your beautiful, beautiful home. We'll get to talk about this home and the artwork that's outside, the sculpture and so forth. Congratulations, you've just been awarded an AMA award. Talk to me about that.
Well, it was a complete surprise for me. In fact, nobody told me I was going to win anything. The director of National Arts Council, Nicholas Moyo, just invited me and said, please, you must come. So I had another function with the South Korean embassy, and which finished about 9:30. Then he said, are you coming? I said, oh yeah, I'm on my way. Then I got there, I was sitting down, and then when they talked about this award, service to the arts, my name was called out. So I had no expectation whatsoever that I'd win anything. And you won it.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And what is it that you have done that has made the arts fraternity give you this award?
Trevor, I can only speculate. I think I've been interested in art since the 90s. As you can see here, I've been collecting for quite some time. Both paintings and sculptures, very interested in first generation sculptures, but also modern ones like Dominic Benura. That's one aspect. And because of that, I think Doris Banda, the executive director, proposed that I become chairman of the National Gallery of Zimbabwe. I've done 5 years. I've just been given another 5 years. And also, I'm involved with the Theatre Academy. Dell Art in California gives scholarships to theatre practitioners, and these youngsters didn't have airfares. So that's how I started. One came to ask for airfare. I did that. Then the second one, and then they said, can you not have a relationship? So that happened. And then, of course, I have my ideas into movies or films and also plays. So I did a play called Coming Home. And now we're doing 4 short movies about the things that I'm interested in.
You know, I'm laughing because you are such a busy man. And I ask myself, where do you get the time to do this? But then I'm reminded of somebody who said, if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. Your life is so busy, your life is so hectic. But let's go back to the beginnings. Where were you born?
I was born in Nyazura, which is a small town between Rusape and Mutare. And I went to school, primary school, right there, small school called Zambuko Primary School. Then for the upper primary, I went to St. Peter's Tokoyo, again in Nyazura. After that, I went to Norway Mission, which is in Macheke. And we were the pioneers for Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. After that, I went to high school in Swaziland, Waterford Kamkaba School, which is one of these United World colleges. Thereafter, I came back to University of, it was Rhodesia then, yeah.
And tell me your experience at Waterford. Was there anything that you recall about that is special about Waterford in terms of the way it affected your life?
You know, Waterford was very special to me because it was truly multiracial. And everybody from everywhere was there. And I remember vividly, it was also very political in the sense that Mandela's daughters, Zeni and Zinze, were there at the same time, and our head girl was Lindwe Sisulu, Walter Sisulu's daughter. So, although I was doing sciences, there was lots of discussion on politics, on political, economic, social systems, and I grew up a lot. And also, for me, with this background I had, it was the first time, you mix with other races and realize you're just like anybody else. There's nothing inferior about you or nothing different about you. You're just another human being. And that I got from Waterford. And also the other important thing was giving back to society, contributing to society as much as you can. I learned that from Waterford.
And then from Waterford, you came back. Tell me about your education, University of Zimbabwe.
Yes, with University of Zimbabwe. And funny enough, at that time, in my class, for instance, in medicine, we were about 52, and only about 8 or 9 of us were black. So it was a trying time, which was, I suppose, when you look back, it did help us a lot because we had to work that extra hard to make it in medicine. When we were qualified, then I went to Mpilo to work as a junior doctor.
And then you went to Glasgow after that?
Yes, I went to Scotland, and that's where I specialized in ophthalmology. And my first love, in fact, when I was in Mpilo, was obstetrics and gynecology. And I remember I had a senior registrar from India, who is a very close friend of mine today. We called him the Chief. And up to this day, he calls me the Black Man. And I had a friend from Nepal whom he called the Yellow Man. And one day we were in a pub, and I said, Chief, I'm still thinking about Ops and Gynae. And he said to me, Black Man, I know you so well. You stay above the waist.
Wow.
That's what happened.
Tell me the choice of ophthalmology.
Yes.
What made you choose that? I mean, obviously, you've been told to stay away. What other factors made you go for that choice?
Sometimes things just happen because I got a scholarship to go overseas by the World Health Organization. Yeah. And at that time, there was a lady in the Ministry of Health, a white lady, who came to blow away and said to me, I look at your hands. I think we're looking for an eye specialist. You should do ophthalmology. And then I thought about that. And that's how I got the scholarship. And when I went there, I ended up in a very big eye hospital, which was one of the top training centers over there. And then things just happened, like they gave me a job, a paid job, so I didn't need the scholarship, and I got my exams, everything first shot. So it was like somebody was just saying, okay, go ahead like this, and that was it.
I'm passionate about how we find our purpose, and how we find, the things that God intends us to do. And what you're just outlining to me right now is God directing you towards your purpose.
Yes, and now, interesting enough, I always say eyes are physical vision. But now I'm so interested in how we think, our mindset, which you could say intellectual vision, maybe spiritual. And I'm very interested in that right now.
That's your internal eye,
yes,
rather than the physical eye,
yeah.
Your spiritual eye. That's what you're focusing on right now.
Yes, because the physical, we've started training programs. You can train other eye specialists, and that's fine. But for us to really address the way we think, for us to move forward, I find this extremely interesting and challenging right now.
We'll get to that because I know your passion for that. But I know your parents are very important to you.
Yes.
Talk to me about your upbringing, the way you were raised, the values that were instilled in you, what your parents mean to you.
My mother was an ordinary housewife in the village. Very, very smart lady with very strong values. And she believed in helping everybody, but also instilled the love for education. So most of my siblings, we could read and write before we went to school because of my mother. Now, my father, you could call him just a domestic servant, at best a butler. He worked for a Jewish man. And they were so close, and he was very loyal. I think he joined this man since he was a bachelor. Had all his children working for this man. He never worked for anybody else except for this Jewish family. And then
essentially as a domestic worker.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the Jewish man died, and he was so loyal and honest to them. And the result of this is that the wife, Ida Buffenstein, got me into a private school, made sure that I went to a private school. That's how I got into Waterford. And we became very close until she died in Israel. But what I learned is that when you are very loyal and very honest, this is what happens. And because of that, I was then able to help my siblings. And my father ended up staying with me. When my mother died when I was in high school, I took my father, and he stayed in this house with me for maybe 15, 20 years. And he actually died in this house. And I have realized that when you have both parents, you're extremely lucky. When you have one parent, you are lucky. But when you don't have parents, you don't realize until you lose them what they mean. And I've never recovered from the loss of my mother. And when my father was with me here, we used to go back to Noe Mission, where he dropped me when I was a young boy doing Form 1. And I used to take him back when I was a guest speaker at the school and say, this man dropped me many years ago. I was his dependent. Now, I bring him back here, he's my dependent.
Roles are reversed.
This is it. And it's so important, I think, for parents to invest in education, to sacrifice everything, which I think my parents did, especially my mom. At the same time, I think children must really love and care for their parents. I can never understand anyone who doesn't look after their parent, but they're just so important. And what my father also told me was that he said, if you really want something in this life, if you pray for it hard enough, you'll get it. And the second thing he said to me was, he wanted to die peacefully and quickly, because he didn't want us to take care of him, bath him, and move him from place to place. And that's what happened. I remember that one morning I was going to Chicago, and because he was my butler, the joke was, I says, you work for white people, now you work for me. And they used to give me a salary. We used to joke about that. And I said, I pay you more than what the whites paid you. And then
that's special, that.
It was. We were very close. And then that morning I was in my car, and I said, I forgot my watch. So he was trotting like this. He was 82, but he was quite fit. So he went upstairs, brought my watch, and I left to the airport. And when I got into Washington, he was dead. And then they told me, he woke up that morning and said, I'm not feeling well. And then he was on these steps. He sat down and he said, I don't think I'll make it. Just like that. And then he called my brother and people here. Then after a few minutes he said, I'm going now. Please always have peace and harmony. And he left, just like that.
That's special.
So I have these memories of my dad.
That's special. Oh, that's special. You have helped raise your brothers, educated your siblings. Talk to me about that and what that means to you.
Well, I'm second in my family. We're 3 boys first, and then 4 girls. The rest of the family is overseas. The young brother who comes after me is in Washington.
What's his name?
Pardon.
Okay.
That's his name. And he is working there and is now doing psychology. And he's there with his wife. And then the girl's Precious is a professor in North Carolina. And the sister number 3 is in Washington. She's she did an MBA. She's into finance and administration. And the other 2 ladies are in England.
What are the names?
Well, there's Precious, then there's Mercy, and there's Ruby, and there's Memory.
Quite a big family.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I must tell you about my family is that my father, and we joked about this, he ended up traveling. So he went to England, spent time with his daughters. Then he went to America and spent 6 months with his daughters there, plus the son of his employer, the Baffansteins. And my father taught this guy to speak Shona, so he speaks fluent Shona, and he became one of the top lawyers in the States. He was the president of the immigration lawyers, but so humble, speaks Shona fluently, and yet remembers my dad, and now we are like family.
You know, as you're talking, I'm laughing inside, because this is a buckler, this is a domestic worker, who has been blessed by these kids who are all over the world. He's now traveling and seeing the world. What a great story that is.
And when he came back, Trevor, he said to me, if I die now, I'm such a happy man. That's what he said to me. So I'm just so blessed that he spent all these years with me, because I wanted to know his bedroom was next to mine. He's next door. He eats what he likes. He drinks what he likes. He loved soccer. So this was his room next door. And there's a picture of him there, because that was his room for watching football.
He's a special man to you, wasn't he?
Yeah, both my parents were very special, both of them.
Awesome. Yeah. Like you said, we all ought to realize how blessed we are if we have our parents around, and we need to take good care of them.
We must. And the eldest went into politics. He was by far the smartest of all of us. He went to a multiracial school in Zambia then, so he was very articulate. And he became a political activist. And when he was starting at UZ, he was already in politics. He used to move around with Edson Stoller and them, and Zororo, that was a close friend of his. And then he went to Mozambique and was very close to Chris Muchangwa. And he rose up in the ranks in Mozambique. But he was one of those, I suppose, wanted to overthrow the system, and they were arrested, put in dungeons and so on. And when he came back, basically, a cabbage, psychiatric. So he's here with me. I look after him.
What has that taught you about life and politics generally?
Trevor, it's very difficult because you see people who have spent the best time of their lives, the prime of their youth, believing in a cause. And then they come back and they end up in this state. I mean, not only my brother, but lots of people are in that situation. Some have died now. So you start questioning yourself, but what was this all about? Because, okay, one fights for freedom from colonialism, but there's also freedom from disease, freedom from illiteracy. All those things are important. So we have to look into ourselves and ask ourselves, where are we and where are we going?
How is he doing? How old is he now?
He's 67. You
literally taken care of him?
Oh, yes. Yeah, since he came back, since 1980, yeah. Yeah. He's still very intelligent, and we discuss. And I was very impressed because some of his colleagues came to see him, Advocate Ambassador Bonichi Gausiku and Gulandebele, and another lady, Niru Kweza, were with him. They tell me stories about him. And I remember the previous commissioner of police, Churi, came to my practice as my patient. And my brother was standing at the gate. And then he came and he said, "Is that a comrade?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What is he doing now?" So I told him the story. And the Churi, I saw tears drying down his cheek and said, "If there's anything." Then he told me an interesting story. This guy, during the war, he was so articulate and people loved to hear him speak. And they would provoke him to speak. And the interesting thing, Trevor, was I was not into politics, but during my time at Waterford, I read a lot about politics. And so I knew all these things about conscientizing the masses and so on. So my brother used to speak like that, all the ideas I gave him, and he looked like he knew so much, but I think some of the ideas were from me.
All right. Let's go now to your passion, Dr. Guramatunhu, which is as an eyes specialist. You started at Sekuru Kaguvi Eye Hospital. You equipped it. You worked there. Just briefly speak to me about that experience.
Yes, I came back in the early 90s, and we were really primitive. We didn't have operating microscopes. We didn't have proper instruments. And when I look back, it was exciting for me to have this challenge. So I had the opportunity to actually build a department, a tertiary center, where we brought in lots of equipment, and I was working with friends from the States. It was called Surgical Eye Expeditions. And the man I worked with, Harry Brown, was the founder of this organization based in Santa Barbara. We became very close. He came to visit me or visit us here about 4 times. But we were able to bring equipment. We also worked with other organizations, Rotary. So I'd fly to San Francisco, address them. We'd go to Amsterdam and meet the Lions. So we're able to bring this equipment.
That is for building Sekuru Kaguvi.
Yes. And then after that, we were able to offer more services. Like we started doing modern cataract surgery, putting lens implants, and we started doing corneal transplantations. And we also worked with the Desert Foundation, who helped us to bring corneas and so on. And we started doing laser. The first laser in this country came Sekuru Kaguvi Hospital at that time, in the early 90s. We brought that in for diabetics. And then it became obvious we had to start a training program for eye specialists.
And that's when you went into Eyes for Africa. Was that the project?
No, the first was the training.
Okay.
We started a training program, a master's in ophthalmology program. And I remember vividly, the first students I had were all foreigners, 6 of them.
Why? Why no local interest in ophthalmology?
There's just no interest. I mean, people didn't have anybody they could look up to or emulate, or it just wasn't there. So it was foreigners who probably just realized it was a good thing. So I remember students from Ghana, from DRC, we had some Zambia, from Tanzania, and Malawi, but no Zimbabwean.
So you get the project started?
So we got training started. And my job at that moment was to market ophthalmology. So be on TV and talking about eyes and this and that. And then slowly, Zimbabweans then started loving ophthalmology and applying for ophthalmology. Now, Eyes for Africa was different. The idea for Eyes for Africa was to help poor people in the rural areas who could not afford treatment, but were blind from cataracts, so that we could offer free surgeries. And we felt we always looked outside, America or Europe, to help us. We thought, no, with help from outside, but we, the Zimbabweans, should help our own people. These are our grandfathers and so on. So this was the idea of the project. And I'm grateful because this project took us everywhere, being Kariba, everywhere, Chipinge, Mutoko, we went Umfungwe, we went everywhere in this country. But not only that, we did operate with colleagues in Zambia. So I went to Ndola but twice. I went to Namibia. I went to
Do you have an idea of how many people you touched? How many this project touched? Would you have an idea?
Oh, yeah, thousands. I mean, I'm sure by now, not just what I did, but what other colleagues did in the program, we'll say well above 50,000, because we're doing lots and lots and lots.
And the doctors that you trained, do you have any number? How many you ended up training?
Yeah,
locals?
I was trying to check the figure the other day,
Yeah.
and it's maybe 35 to 40.
Wow.
I mean, right now they're 15 in the program. So, it's quite a number now. Some have left the country, of course.
And now let's move on to talking about, you've built a very successful business in terms of the eye center that you've got. Talk to me about the challenges of building that. Investing, finding the funds to invest into the business, building the brand that you've become in this area.
I don't know, Trevor, what to say, because some things just happen in this life. Seriously, you can't say, I figured this out, I figured that out. I'll be telling you lies. It just happened. Everything just happened. And I feel sorry for the young doctors now, because during the 90s and when we started practice, the economy was doing very well. So it was easy to even self-fund to develop.
Which is what you did.
Which is what I did, yeah. And now it's a bit different because, things are pretty tough for youngsters. So maybe, of course, people like myself, as we bow out, we get the youngsters to come and join us, and they also take over some of the things that we do. Yeah, but it just happened, to be honest.
And you have people coming from the region to be treated by you. Talk to me about that, because I see people from Zambia, from South Africa,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
so
we've
forth.
had lots of patients from Zambia.
Your expertise is well sought after.
From Angola, from Mozambique. It's just also a question of luck. It just happens. You're in the right place at the right time.
Right.
These things happen.
Right. And the when you look back now, the status of you say when you started it was perhaps relatively easy. When you look at now, what's happening to the sector that you are in right now, what are your thoughts? I mean, if you compare that with what happened when you were helping, the Sekuru Kaguvi hospital, and what things are right now, what goes through your mind?
Trevor, it's very sad. It's very sad. And I'll tell you why. When I was training at Harare Hospital, this was such an important hospital. And I remember when I first went to Scotland, one consultant said to me, "You come from Harare? That's a very important hospital," because the publications that used to come out. But not only that, what I remember vividly was, say an old man in the rural areas was gored by a cow and the intestines were coming out. He'd be rushed to Harare Hospital. We'd rush around in casualty, take bloods and x-rays and everything. The very same night, that patient would go into theater would operate throughout the night. Early in the morning, we're doing ward rounds. 5 days later, this man could walk down from Pagomo, from Harare Hospital, with all his medications that he needed. And that was what was happening every day. When I think, Trevor, that poor people sometimes cannot afford medication and so on, I just feel so sad. And ask myself, how can it be? How can we be like this? And how can we treat our own people like this?
And what's the answer?
I'm afraid that, let me answer you like this. You know, we've said, oh, we looked west, we have looked east. I suggest we look into ourselves. That's where the answers lie.
Wow. One of your projects is the Guramatunhu Family Trust, where you're giving back to society, which is great work that you're doing. Do you mind talking to us about it, the kind of projects that you're involved in and other projects of giving back to society?
Sure. How it all started was I would get youngsters. They come to my practice and then they say, well, you know, I lost my mother, I lost my father, but I've got these results. I've got 3 A's or sometimes 4 A's, and have a place at a university, maybe University of Zimbabwe, and I want to study medicine. But I'm looking for funding. So you help the individual. And then another one comes, and another one comes, and so on. And also, I became chairman of Bindura University of Science Education. So I was there for 10 years. So seeing all these youngsters, and you know, when you've grown up the way I did, you realize how important education is and how unfortunate it would be for someone who's bright and brilliant not to have that opportunity that I got. So that's how the family trust, I said, you know, let's build a family trust and give a scholarship fund. So we had like 10 students at Bindura, 10 students at UZ, and also had students at MSU. And later on we thought it should be a revolving fund, so those who qualify can also give something back. So right now we've had students even from NAST and also from School of Mines, and also each time I went to the village. I remember one time I was missing my dad a lot, so I went back to the village to where we buried him. He's next to my mother. And I saw a young guy just sitting over there. And I said, what is he doing? Oh, he finished all levels, he has no school fees. So we take those kind of youngsters up. And now they've all become, some of them accountants, some of them. So the Family Trust Scholarship Fund, they have kind of number of students to...
So is it still ongoing?
It's still ongoing, yes.
Okay.
Ongoing, yeah.
What would a young person sitting at home do if they wanted to get involved in this
most of them,
project?
they approach me directly.
Okay.
At universities like Bindura, normally the committee, and MSU as well, a committee which decides who gets the scholarship. Some just come to me directly and we assess, is it a true case and so forth. Then tied to that was giving back to the schools that I went to. That was so important for us that like in primary school, we have a Guramatunhu trophy where the best students would get trophies and some money. And then I became patron of the Zimbabwe Rural Schools Library Trust. And the idea was that every Zimbabwean must go back to their primary school and make sure that there's a library and an ICT center. So, you know, one has to lead by example. So I went to St. Peter's, Tokyo, so we did that. And now we're working on another school right now. And I had no emission because I used to play tennis. So I did a tennis school there. So the trust gets involved in all these things.
Where does that come from, the involvement in all these projects? Is it because of the way you were brought up? Is it because you're seeing the need? What actually drives this philanthropy of yours?
I would say primarily, Trevor, from my parents, because my mother was so giving. And she would never let anyone just come to the house, and even if she didn't have much herself, but she would give. My father was also extremely generous. All the relatives, whatever, when they came, even to this house, I think, hey, old man, what are you up to? But he'd just give, whatever he had, the food, and whatever, even his clothes, and so on. And then I think also Waterford School, because the idea of community service was very emphasized there. And I've seen some of the people who went to these United World Colleges, they have that philosophy within themselves to give back.
What's the biggest kick for you in doing that? Where does the satisfaction come from? Talk to me about that.
To see a youngster who absolutely had no chance in life, but because our paths crossed and I did play a part, maybe a small part, but I did play a part, and you see them blossom. They become a professional, they become successful, and especially if they also end up giving back. That gives me the biggest kick in life.
Wow. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we will be focusing on something that you're very passionate about, which is, first of all, focusing on your amazing hobbies, your dancing, which people don't know about. We're going to focus on your campaign for ladies to wear their natural hair. So please don't go away. Stay with us and join us for part 2.